Hello, Math 8 students. Mr. Yoon again with another review video. I know some students are worried about the upcoming quiz on Tuesday, so let me just kind of go over some of the main concepts that you need to know for the quiz. Now, for the quiz, I will be asking you to find the square root of a certain number, and I may also ask you to find the cube root of a number. So it's very important that you understand the concept of square roots. So I think everyone knows if I have the square root of 25, how would you find that answer? Well, the square root of 25, that's simply going to be 5. Okay, so before I start some of the review problems, let me go over why the square root of 25 is 5. Alright, so in order to do this, let me just kind of write some numbers down here. 1 times 1 is going to be 1. 2 times 2 is going to be 4. 3 times 3 is going to be 9. 4 times 4 is going to be 16. And I'll stop with 5. 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so I've put together a list of numbers here. And hopefully you can see there's a pattern here. If I take two numbers, and you'll notice that the numbers are going to be the same. Okay, so if I have two numbers that are going to be the same, and if I multiply them together, then I would get these numbers highlighted in blue. Okay, now for the quiz, I'll ask you simple questions like, what's the square root of 1? What's the square root of 4? What's the square root of 9? What's the square root of 16? What's the square root of 25? And you know, for these kind of questions, you'll see that the square root of 1 is going to be 1. And basically what's happening is I need to find two numbers that are the same, and if I multiply them together, I need to get this 1 here. So the only two numbers that are the same, and if I multiply them together, that will get me 1, is going to be 1 times 1. And that's this is the idea of the pair. Okay, so when I'm asking you to find the square root of a number, like the square root of 4, basically I'm asking you to find a pair of numbers that are the same. So 2 times 2, that's, you know, 2 times 2, those two numbers are the same, and that's a pair, so the square root of 4 is going to be 2. The square root of 9 is going to be 3, the square root of 16 is going to be 4, and the square root of 25 is going to be 5. Okay, so once again, if I'm asking you to find the square root of 25, I'm just saying, can you think of two numbers that are the same, and if I multiply them together, I get 25, and that's basically this case right here. Sorry, that's this case right here. 5 times 5 equals to 25. So basically, my 5 times 5, those two numbers are the same, and that becomes, this idea becomes a pair, and that goes right there. Okay, so that's how square roots work. You're just looking for two numbers that multiply to, you know, this inside number. So if I have, like, once again, if I have 16, for example, basically this question is asking you, it's asking, like, can you think of two numbers that are the same that multiply to 16? And those numbers will be 4 and 4. So in 4 and 4, you just take the pair out. That's one pair, and that will just become a single 4. Okay, so that's how square roots work, and we're going to use that idea throughout this review session. And in this review video, basically what I'll do next is I'm going to simply go through all the different kind of problems that were handed out to you guys. And for the quiz, I've asked you guys to go over questions 1 to 4. So let me go over questions 1 to 4 in this video review here. So question number 1 says, identify the following as, okay, so I'll just delete that and say as. Identify the following as irrational, undefined, and or whole numbers. Okay, so irrational means you have these ugly numbers. Okay, ugly numbers, like you get decimals like 1.78625, going on forever, some ugly numbers. Undefined means that you have like an impossible situation. And whole numbers, we'll just say that these are the nice numbers. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at these numbers, and let's just determine if they're irrational, undefined, and or whole numbers. Starting with the square root of 121. Well, basically, if I have the square root of 121, that's basically asking, like, can you think of two numbers that are being multiplied together that are the same that will give you, like, 121? And this answer is simply going to be 11. The square root of 121 is 11 because if I take 11 and if I times it by itself, I get 121. All right, so this right here is my pair. Okay, and that pair will combine to become one number, which is simply going to be 11. Okay, so for this question, the square root of 121 is going to be 11. And since 11 is a nice number, this is a nice number, hashtag, we call this a whole number. Okay. All right, let's move on. What about pi here? Well, pi, if you know the decimal expansion of pi, pi is going to be 3.1415926. And it goes on forever. And so this decimal expansion right here, this is kind of like an ugly number. So it matches the definition of an irrational number. So pi is going to be an irrational number. Okay. Now, what about the cube root of 9? Well, basically what this is saying is, can you think of three numbers, can you think of three numbers that are the same, and if you multiply those numbers together, will you get 9? And that's actually impossible, because if I think of my small numbers, like 1 times 1 times 1, that gives me 1. If I think of 2 times 2 times 2, that gives me 8. If I have 3 times 3 times 3, that gives me 27. So basically, I don't have these nice numbers that multiply together in order to get me this nice little 9 here. Okay, and actually, if you go to your calculators and calculate the cube root of 9, you actually get a very ugly number here. So let me just, if you actually went to your calculator, this would actually be 2.080083 going on forever. And you'll notice that this is a very ugly number, so an ugly number with an ugly decimal expansion, so this will be irrational. Okay. Moving on, negative 0 divided by 9. Well, 0 divided by anything will always give you a 0. Alright, so since 0 is a nice number here, this will be a whole number. Okay, moving on. What about 12 divided by 0? Well, if I give you a test and I tell you that you got 12 out of 0, does that make a lot of sense? And the answer is no. Alright, this is actually impossible. And once again, if you actually go to your calculators and do 12 divided by 0, that will give you an error sign. So you can never divide by 0, so that's going to be impossible. So that's going to be undefined. Okay. And can you take the square root of a negative number? And the answer is no, you cannot. This is also an undefined situation. You can never take the square root of a negative number. However, you can take the square root of you can take the cube root of a negative number. So if I asked you what is the cube root of negative 8, this is simply going to be negative 2. Okay, and why is it negative 2? Well, all you have to do is you need three numbers that are the same, and if you multiply those three numbers together, you need to get negative 8. If I take negative 2, multiply that by negative 2, and multiply that by negative 2, well, negative 2 times negative 2 gives you positive 4, and positive 4 times negative 2, well, that will give you negative 8. And that is this guy inside there, and this is kind of like your pair right now. This is your pair of 3, and that will combine just to give you one final answer of negative 2. Right? Alright, so we'll definitely practice more questions with the cube root later on in this review session, but this first question is all about, like, do you understand the definitions of irrational, undefined, or whole numbers? Okay? Alright, so let's move on now. On your quiz, you'll definitely have a few questions very similar to question number 2. for question number 2, you're no longer using math definitions. You're actually going to come out here and just compute these numbers here. So let's take a look at the questions from section number 2 on the review. I have a -5 minus bracket -12 close bracket. Okay, so whenever you have one of these kind of questions and you see these negative signs next to each other, whenever you have two negative signs next to each other, they will combine and they will give you a positive. Okay, so those two negative signs combine and give you a positive. So this question now simplifies to -5 plus 12. And -5 plus 12 is going to be positive 7. Okay, and that's it for question 2A. For question 2B, very similar concept here. I see these two negative signs next to each other, and whenever those two negative signs are next to each other, they will become positive. So I have bracket -122 plus 71. And from here on, you can just remove the brackets here, and the question is simply going to be -122 plus 71. And this is something that you have to think about. You may have to think about this and do a few calculations here, but -122 plus 71 is going to be -51. Okay. Clearly, -122 is bigger than 71, so your answer should still be negative. Okay. Now, before I kind of move on to the next problem, if you're having troubles solving a problem like this, -122 plus 71, what you can do is you can set this up as a regular adding and subtracting problem. Like, for example, maybe you can just do this, 122 minus 71. Now, this is a problem that most students can do. This is going to be 1. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to borrow this 1 and make this a 12. And 12 minus 7, that's going to be 51. Okay, so if I have 122 minus 71, I get this answer of 51 here. And in order to kind of get to the final answer, you have to make one modification here. Now, clearly, -122 is definitely bigger than 71. So you know your final answer has to be negative. So all you have to do is just put a negative sign at the very end here. So I have this -51, and that can also give you your final answer. So if you're not sure about how to do a question like this, what I recommend is look at your numbers, like -122 and 71. Clearly, -122 is bigger than 71. So I recommend just setting up the problem like this, 122 minus 71, and then your final answer has to be a negative sign because -122 is bigger than 71, and then just do this problem as normal and you'll get your 51, and then add the negative sign to get your final answer of -51. Alright, hopefully that helps with question number B. Let's move on to question number C now. Question number C, same concept. I have two negative signs together there. So if I have two negative signs together, that will become positive. So 190 plus 1001. There's no tricks here. 190 plus 1001. You can do that on the side there, and you'll get 1191. Okay. All right. Let's move on to question number D now. All right, question number D is simply just asking. Question number D is simply testing whether you understand this idea, this concept of two negatives next to each other. And once again, if you have two negatives next to each other, this will just become positive 125, and you can just write positive 125 simply as just 125, and that would be it for question number D. For question number E. Okay, so I have two negative signs there. Over here I have a negative and a positive sign, so then we need to do something a little bit different over there. So this will be negative 285. I have two negative signs, so that will be positive 124. And then over here I have a negative sign and a positive sign. Now when you have a negative sign and a positive sign, the negative sign always wins. So this will be negative 921. Okay. Alright, so now that you've have the proper signs here, you can simply just compute this. So negative 285 plus 124 minus 921 this will give me a final answer of negative 1082. Okay. And yeah, so there's different ways to do a problem like this. Like, how would you do this problem if you couldn't do this quickly in your head here? Well, let's just take a look here. Let me just delete this answer here. Now, if you're not sure how to do this if you're not sure how to get the final answer of negative 1082, I recommend doing the following. Now, just take your negative numbers, negative 285 and negative 921. Since both of those numbers are negative, all you have to do is just add them. Add them like this. This would be 6. This would be 10. That'll be 12. 1206. You can add those numbers like that. But since both numbers are negative, both numbers here are negative, right? Just put a minus sign at the very end. Okay. So now all you have to do is you have negative 12006, and then just add positive 124. Okay, and when you have negative 1206, and if you add 124, you'll get negative 1082. Okay, so hopefully that one's not too bad. All right, for question number F, for question number F here, you are no longer adding or subtracting, you are multiplying now. And the rule is when you're multiplying or dividing, you have to look at the total number of negative signs in your question. In this question, I have 2 negative signs. So if I have 2 negative signs, that means my final answer will be positive. All right, so once again, you have 2 negative signs here, and since 2 is an even number, your final answer will be positive. So all you have to do now is just do 12 times 30. That's going to be 0, 0, 0. It's going to give you a 6 and a 3. So your final answer here should be positive 360. Positive 360 or just plain 360. All right, let's move on now. Question number 3, we're just doing square roots here. All right, so for question number 3, I'm evaluating the square root of 144 here. So if I have the square root of 144, basically this question is asking me, can you think of 2 numbers multiplied together that would give me, those 2 numbers would have to be the same, and if I multiply them together, I would get 144. All right, well, I'm not going to think about those 2 numbers right now, but I'm going to approach this question using the factor tree method. So if I have 144, let me think of 2 numbers that go into 144, and that's going to be 2 and 72. And well, 2 I can't break down, but this 72 I can still break the 72 down. So if I break down 72 using 2 again, this will give me 2 and 36. And 36 I can break down to 6 and 6, and this will be a 3 and 2, and this will be 3 and 2. Okay, so the idea is you want to find pairs. Okay, you want to find pairs of the same numbers. So here I have a 2 and 2. That's going to be a pair. So with that pair, I'm going to bring that pair to the outside here combined. I'm going to combine those 2 2's into 1 2. So there's my first pair there. And if I look at the 3's, I have a pair there as well. So there's another pair there. So I'm going to take that pair and put that on the outside number there. And finally, I have another pair here. I have a 2 here and a 2 here. That's a pair, so I'm going to put that final 2 over here highlighted in yellow. Okay? So if I look at this expression right here, 2 times 3 times 2, well, that's going to be 6 times 2, which is going to be 12. All right, so my final answer here is going to be 12. The square root of 144 is 12. And if I take 12 here, and if I do 12 times 12, that's going to give me 144. So I know that 12 indeed is my final answer for that question. So this is a good way on how you can just check your answer. Just take your answer and multiply by itself. And if you get the inside number, which I do, that means you know that your question is right. Okay, that was a bit messy, but hopefully the concept is clear there. Moving on to question number 3b here. Now I have a cube here, so that means I got to find pairs of 3 now. Now, approach this question the same way as the previous problem. Think of numbers that go into 125. Well, this is going to be 5 and 25. And I can break down the 25 as just 5 and 5. Okay, now once again, look at this 3 here, right? This 3 means you got to find a pair of 3s. Like you got to find a pair of 3 numbers that are the same. So here are 3 numbers that are the same. This is my pair of 3 right there. So this is simply going to be 5. So that 5 is just all those, basically these 3 5s, they combine into just 1 5 as your final answer. Okay. And moving on to question number 3C. For 3C, there's a 4 here. So this means you got to find a pair of 4 numbers that are the same. Alright, so let's keep that in mind when we're doing this problem here. Now 81, let's just break this down into, 2 numbers. So 9 times 9 gives you 81. 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. And this 9 breaks down into 3 and 3. Well, here are my pair of 4 numbers are the same, so my final answer here is simply is going to be 3. Okay, so before I move on, let me just kind of erase these 3 questions here and kind of talk about and kind of summarize the results here. For question number 3C, I was looking for a pair of 3 numbers that are the same. For question C, I was looking for a pair of 4 numbers. 4 numbers are the same. And for question number 3A, I'm looking for a pair of 2 numbers that are the same. Alright, so this 2 right here, sometimes you might see a 2 over there to indicate you need a pair of 2 numbers, but a lot of times we don't write the 2 for a single square root. But the idea is whenever you have just a square root by itself with no number, out in the front, generally that means you are looking for a pair of 2 numbers. Okay. Alright, so let's keep that in mind as we kind of move forward here. Now the square root of, now for question number D here, I have the square root of a negative number, so that's going to be undefined. Remember, you can never take the square root of a negative number. Now, what about question E? I have 1296, the square root of 1296. Now, for this question, let's break this down by finding numbers that go in. Let's find numbers that break into 1296. And if I do 2, then this is gonna be 2 and 648 here. 2 times 648 is 1296. Then once again, you can break down 648. Let's try 2 again. So this will be 2 and 324. And then can we break down 324? The answer is yes. Let's try to break 324 into 2 again. That's going to be 2 and 162. Now the hard part is on the quiz you actually have to use long division here and break these numbers down. And but we still continue the pattern here. 162. If we divide that by 2, we'll get 81. So 2 times 81 will give you 162. And then finally 81 is something that we can do quite easily here. This will be 9 and 9. And this will be 3 and 3, and this will be 3 and 3. Okay, so we got a lot of numbers there. Now, remember, the idea is whenever we're taking the square root of a number, we got to find pairs of 2. We got to find 2 numbers that are the same. Okay, so using my black marker here, here's a pair. There's a pair of 2. 2 numbers that are the same. Alright, well here's another pair of 2. Those 2 numbers are the same. And at the very bottom here I have a pair of 2 numbers again that are the same, which is 3 and 3. And here I have a pair of 2 numbers that are the same, which are 3 and 3. So going back to my first pair highlighted in yellow here, this is my first pair. With that first pair I'm just going to bring that outside here as a 2. And then I have another pair here highlighted in blue. I'm going to bring that guy up here and just multiply that by 2. And then I have another pair of 3s here, so I'm going to bring this pair of 3 up here and multiply that by 3. And then I have another pair here in purple That's another pair, so I'm going to bring that pair, and that pair will just become 1, 3. And there we go. I have my final answer here is simply going to be 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Well, if I do 2 times 2, that's going to be 4. And 4 times 3 is going to be 12. And 12 times 3 is going to be 36. Alright, so my final answer here, if I erase all that, this is going to be equal to 36. The square root of 1296 is going to be 36. And you can do a little check here. If I take this 36 and multiply it by itself, I will get 1296 here. Okay? So there you go. My final answer for that question is going to be 36. Alright, let's move on to question number F here. For question number F, I see a 3 there, so that means I need a pair of 3s. Okay, let's break down 1728 here. 1728, let's see, well, 1728 can break down to 2 and 864, and you would use long division there again. 864 is divisible by 2, and so that's going to be 2 and 432. 432 is also divisible by 2, and 2 times, that'll be 216 there. Then I'm going to break down my 216 to be 2, and that's going to be 108. 108 I can break down as well. That's going to be 2 and 54. And finally 54, that's going to be a number that I can do in my head. That's going to be 6 and 9. This will be 3 and 2. And this will be 3 and 3. Okay, so this question is a bit tricky because, like I said, we got to find a pair of 3 numbers that are the same here. So a pair of 3 numbers are the same. Well, here are 3 numbers that are the same. So I'm going to pull that out as a single 2. And then if I keep on going down the ladder here, notice that I have a pair right here. 3 numbers that are the same, so that's a pair of 3. So I'm going to pull that 3 back up here. That's going to be 3. And finally, I have a few 2's here, a 2 there, a 2 there, and a 2 there highlighted in yellow. So those 2's will come out and come 1, 2. And if I multiply these 3 numbers across, 2 times 3 times 2, that's simply going to be 12. So my final answer here is going to be 12. The cube root of 1728 is 12. And what that means is, if I have this 12 here, and if I take 12 and multiply it by itself 3 times, 12 times 12 times 12, that's going to give me 1728, which is this number which is that number on the inside. Good. All right, so that's it with square roots. Let's move on to question number 4 here. Question number 4 is all about the calculations and if you understand the concepts of using negative and positive numbers. So these are some great questions, and I recommend doing these questions over again so that you are fully prepared for tomorrow's quiz. Now, for these kind of questions, remember, we can always, we're still going to be using bed mass. So if you have a problem and you're not sure what to do, always follow bed mass. So for question number 4A here, this is all question number 4. If I follow the bed mass rules here, look at this expression right here. Bed mass means you want to do the brackets first. Well, here's my bracket, and well, that's nothing really is going on in that bracket there. I just have a negative 11 there, so you can't really do anything. So let's move on. After brackets, there's exponents. Well, I'm not using an exponent, so I better move on to division here. So for question number 4A, the first thing I want to do is I want to focus on this part of the question right there, the division statement. Okay, so I have, if I just erase this for a second here, if I focus on this part right here, you have to ask yourself, how can I simplify that part there in green? Well, notice that 11 and 11, they're the same thing, right? 11 divided by 11 is going to simply give me 1. 11 divided by 11 is 1. Now, look at your negative signs. How many negative signs do you have? I have 2 negative signs. If you have 2 negative signs, then your final answer will be positive. Okay, so negative 11 divided by negative 11 is going to be positive 1. And after that, you just simply bring down the 9. And 9 plus 1 is going to be 10. And that's how you do question number 4A. Moving on to question number 4B here. For this kind of question, I recommend doing the numerator first and then do the denominator and then take the final answer by dividing the numerator and the denominator. Now look at your numerator right here. I have negative 120 divided by 10. Okay, well, how many negative signs do you see in the numerator? I see one negative sign, so in your numerator you should have a negative answer. Now ask yourself, what is 120 divided by 10? How many times does 10 go into 120? Well, that's going to be 12 times. So the numerator is simply going to be negative 12. Moving on to the denominator there, 2 minus 8, well, that's just a calculation here. Is the answer going to be positive or negative? Well, the answer will be negative on the denominator because 8 is a bigger number than 2, and 2 minus 8 will give you a final answer of negative 6. Okay, so when you simplify the denominator, you get negative 6. Now, to finish off this question here, my question is negative 12 divided by negative 6. Well, how many negative signs do you see when you're dividing? Well, I have two negative signs, so if you have two negative signs, your final answer will be positive, and 12 divided by 6 is going to be 2. 6 goes into 12 2 times, so your final answer is positive 2 or just simply 2. Alright, and now let's move on to question number C here. Okay, so for question number C, I have a negative 2, I have a negative 1, and I have this negative 3 bracket 4 closed bracket there. Okay, well, let's simplify the bracket expression first, highlighted in blue. This is, so if I continue on the problem here, this would be negative 2 minus 1 minus 12. So 3 times 4 is 12, and the minus sign in front. Okay, well, now I have a situation where I'm subtracting 3 negative numbers here, and what you can do is you can just simply add up all the numbers. Think of the numbers as being positive, add them all up, and have your final answer as a negative sign because the final answer will be negative. So 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 12 is 15, so this will be negative 15. Alright, and that's it for question number C. Let's move on with question number D here. Once again, let's just evaluate the numerator and the denominator separately, and then we'll evaluate the final answer from there on. 24 minus 27, that's going to be a negative 3. Divided by, well, what's negative 1 minus 2? That's going to be negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 will give you the final answer of just positive 1. The answer is positive because you have two negative signs, and when you have two negative signs, your final answer will be positive. Alright, let's move on now. For question number 4E, you'll notice that you do have some brackets. So if you have brackets, let's do the brackets first. So this will be 2 times. Well, what's 3 minus 4? 3 minus 4 will be negative 1 times. I'll bring down this negative 4. And then ask yourself, what's 10 minus 12? Well, 10 minus 12 is going to be negative 2. Alright, and after that, you just simply multiply the numbers here. What's 2 times negative 1? That's going to be negative 2. And then the multiplication sign comes down. What's negative 4 times negative 2? Well, I have two negative signs, so my final answer will be positive, so this will be positive 8. So 4 times 2 is positive 8. And then you have this negative 2 times positive 8. Well, how many negative signs do you see? I see 1. So your final answer will be negative. And 8 times 2 is going to be 16. Alright, moving on to question 4F here. I see a bracket here, so let's do the bracket first. So the 3 will stay the same. 2 minus 10, that's going to be negative 8 minus 1. Divided by, well, let's just do this calculation right away. 2 minus 7 is going to be negative 5. Right, moving on here, let me just compute this part here in green, highlighted there in green. 3 times negative 8, that's going to be negative 24 minus the 1, the minus 1 comes down, or sorry, the minus 1 just stays there, and then divided by negative 5. Alright, for this question, you have to evaluate this negative 24 minus 1. That's going to give you negative 25 divided by negative 5. And once again, since you have two negative signs, your final answer will be positive, and 25 divided by 5 is going to be 5. How many times does 5 go into 25? Well, 5 goes into 25 5 times. Alright, let's move on to question 4G here. 4G is negative 1 to the power of 17. This is a good question here. So if you did this the long way, this is the same thing as negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 all the way until you do it 17 times. Now the concept is when you're multiplying with negative numbers, your final answer will depend on the number of negative signs in your answer. Well, in this question, ask yourself how many negative signs will you have? Well, you're going to have 17 negative signs. Is 17 an odd or an even number? Well, it's odd. 17 is odd, so that means your final answer should be negative. And 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 17 times, that's just simply going to give you 1. Alright, so the answer for question 4G is negative 1. Alright, let's move on to question number H here. I have this negative 2 to the power of 4 there. Well, what does that mean? That means I'm multiplying negative 2 by itself 4 times. So this is going to be negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 minus, well, what does this expression mean? This 3 to the power of 2. Well, that's going to be 3 times 3. 3 being multiplied by itself 2 times. Okay, now ask yourself, how many negative signs do you see in this multiplication step right there? I see 4 negative signs, so my final answer there will be positive. Then ask yourself, what's 2 times 2? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is going to be 16. So this will be positive 16 minus, well, what's 3 times 3? 3 times 3 is going to be 9. So what is 16 minus 9? Well, 16 minus 9, that's going to give you a final answer of 7. 7 or positive 7, that's the same thing. Okay, let's move on to question number I now. For question number I, just evaluate the brackets. How many negative signs do you see in the numbers highlighted in yellow? Well, I see 2 negative signs, so your final answer will be positive. And what's 90 divided by 10? How many times does 10 go into 90? Well, it goes to 90 9 times. So that's going to be positive 9. And then I'm going to have this minus sign here. This minus sign is this minus sign highlighted there. And what about this expression highlighted in green now? Well, inside those green brackets, how many negative signs do you see? Well, I only see 1 negative sign. And look at here, I have a negative sign and a negative sign next to each other. The rule is if you have 2 negative signs next to each other, then those negative signs will change and you'll get a positive. And what's 50 divided by 25? Well, how many times does 25 go into 50? Well, it goes into 50 2 times. So this question is simply going to be 9 plus 2, which is going to be 11. Alright. Let's move on to the final questions here. I think 4, J, K, and L are some of the more harder questions on the worksheet here. So let's do this here. Okay, so for question number J, what we're going to do is we're going to work with this inside part first. Now, you can do this question without a calculator quite easily if you understand the concepts. Okay, so this 3 means, this 3 here with my red arrow, that means you're looking for pairs of 3. Okay, so let's just expand the inside. The inside is this 2 to the power of 6. Let's just expand the inside here. This is going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And this is all being sent to the power of 2 there. So this green, that blue 2 is going to be this blue 2 there. Now, if you look inside this inside expression here highlighted in green, how many pairs of 3 do you see? Well, here's a pair of 3, and there's a pair of 3. Okay, so this final answer, the inside is simply going to be just 2 times 2. Alright, so this breaks down, those pairs of 3 break down to single pairs, and that's going to be give you a final answer of 4, all to the power of 2. Okay, so rewinding here, what I've just discovered here is this expression right here, the cube root of 2 to the power 6, well, that simply is going to be just 4. Okay, and 4 to the power 2 is going to be 4 times 4, which is going to be 16. So your final answer here is going to be 16. Okay, so for question number 4J, the question is pretty quick if you understand the concept. And the key thing is this 3 right here, you got to remember, you're looking for pairs of 3 numbers that are the same. Great. Now let's move on to question 4K. For 4K, I would start off by doing this, the cube root of negative 27. I have a negative and a negative sign, so that's going to be plus 17. And then your goal is you got to find out what's the cube root of negative 27. Well, the cube root of negative 27, that's going to be negative 3. Okay, it's negative 3 because if you take negative 3 and multiply it by itself 3 times, negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, that's going to give you negative 27, which matches this inside number there. Okay, so the cube root of negative 27 is simply going to be negative 3. And what's negative 3 plus 17? Well, negative 3 plus 17, well, since 17 is bigger, you should get a positive answer, and your final answer should be 14. Negative 3 plus 17 is 14. Alright, let's move on to the final question here. I have a bracket. Alright, so I have a bracket here highlighted in yellow. Negative 4 plus 2 is going to be negative 2. Alright, so that's step number 1. Just do the simplification in that yellow bracket there. And then what I see here is I have a negative 2 being raised to the power 2. So that's the same thing as negative 2 times negative 2. And negative 2 times negative 2, that's going to be positive 4. Alright, and then what you do next is you want to simplify this bracket here. 3 plus 4, that's going to be 7. And then you have this negative number on the outside that kind of carries forward here. So your final answer here is going to be negative 7. Actually, sorry, I made a mistake here. Let me just go back. Sorry, I made a big mistake. This whole thing was wrong. Sorry about that. Let me redo this problem again because I didn't realize that this 3 here is being multiplied onto this whole expression right here. So I apologize for that. Let me just redo the problem here. The negative sign will come on the outside here. The 3 remains. Let's just calculate this inside a number here, which is going to be negative 2. Okay, so this is going to be negative 2 there. And after that, we can simplify this expression here highlighted in red there. That's going to be negative 2 times, oops, sorry. It's going to be negative 2 times negative 2. And then I'll put the 3 right next to it. And then I'll put everything back into the bracket with the negative sign on the outside here. This 3 will drop down. And negative 2 times negative 2, well, that's going to give you positive 4, right? Because you have 2 negative signs. 2 negative signs will give you a positive answer. The negative sign comes on the outside, right? So in this question, the negative sign just drops down. 3 times 4 is going to be 12, and then you need to have the negative sign in front. So your final answer here should be negative 12. All right, so I made a mistake the first time around, but the final answer here should be negative 12. Alright, so that concludes this review. It was a bit long, but there were a fair bit of questions there, and hopefully I kind of answered most of the conceptual questions there. I would really work on adding and subtracting your numbers there, because in this video I did most of those calculations pretty quickly, but on the real quiz you would have to do those separately. You would have to show your side calculations and kind of work through the numbers there. But yeah, so the quiz tomorrow will cover the first 4 questions from the handout that was given out a few classes ago, and then we'll jump right into our chapter test on Friday. All right.